What is happening, everyone? Welcome back again to Around the NSL, and what a week. The league table is blown wide open at the top with 4 days of what I call rapid ascension because, man, Ottawa, they had a well-earned draw against Toronto at home and then went away to Roses and beat them 2-0 at home, at their home, obviously. That's insane. I mean, Wild, meanwhile, eked out a 1-0 win against the Tides at home. And finally, Toronto lost at home to a 10-woman Rise. You know what? That makes the league table really interesting, and it makes me really excited to cover the league. So let's go. All right, we have to start with Ottawa, don't we? Not just because they absolutely killed it this week, but also they were the first two games of the week. So let's start with that. Rapid were hosting AFC Toronto at home, and they were coming in with a very disappointing 1-0 upset loss at home against the Wild. So they had just lost at home. So they needed some redemption. They needed to close the gap against the Roses for the second place. And also they were playing 2 games in 4 days. So lots of pressure. Meanwhile, Toronto came in with a big 2-1 win against the Roses at Stade Montreal, which away from home. So Toronto were very much encouraged by their form, and they wanted to extend their lead at the top. In terms of changes, I think the major change I want to point out was Florence Belzile were starting in place of Stella Downing for Ottawa Rapid, mainly because of a last-minute injury for Downing during warm-up. And this becomes a very big story of the week, not just of this game, but the week because of the impact Belzile makes. So that was a big change. But outside of that, I think the other big change I would say was Jade Kovacevic started for Toronto up top instead of Okoronkwo and Rowe, which was very interesting. I thought it was more of a rotational thing, but very interesting still. But the other changes were all just rotational things for both teams kind of looking ahead into the week. Now, first half, Toronto starts very rusty, incredibly rusty, wayward passes, no high press, absolutely unlike them. Whereas Rapid has good combination plays up top, really good pressing, and it leads to a good couple of chances early on. And overall, I think the game was even, but I would say Rapid were having a better start to the game. Now, the reason they were having a better start was they were playing an interesting back 3 formation. Now, usually they do send their fullbacks up, but this time they were going way up. And so with the back 3, Desi Scott and Ellen Gibson would help them out and help Chu and Adamek go way up. Now, because of this back 3 formation and high fullbacks, it would push the Toronto midfield back and give Rapid more numbers in the midfield and help them create some good chances. Now, this was giving them momentum, but against the run of play, Toronto actually wins the ball in midfield, and Cathro provides a great service and finds the header of Hunter, who, as reliable as always, puts in a really good header across the face of the goal and puts Toronto 1-0 up. Very, very surprisingly. If you were watching the game, you were like, wow, where did that come from? Now, this came because of the same reason. Rapid were playing a back 3, playing too far high up in terms of their fullbacks. Now, what that meant was if Toronto went direct, it would really outnumber the Rapid defense, and that's what happened, and they couldn't handle Hunter, which I really think they should have. Jalissa Harris really should have covered Hunter. She did not, and just like that, Toronto went up 1-0. Now, after this, you would have thought that Toronto would have been a little better, but they weren't. They continued to be wayward with their passes and touches and kept giving Rapid some good chances. And Rapid, for their credit, kept pressing well. They kept having good combination plays. They continued the way they started. And I have to give a big shout out to Florence Belzile. And as I mentioned at the top, this was a huge substitute. Now, Belzile tended to play a little bit more centrally than Downing would have. And that made a huge difference, not just to the strategy, but the way Rapid attacked. Now, what that meant was the front 3 of Ottawa were a lot more compact, and it opened up space for the fullbacks to come up and do their thing. Now, this interesting change of formation helped Rapid create some really good chances, and Belzile herself, to her credit, is very good in the ball, and she's very creative as well, and she herself could have had a goal if she had finished. But all that work combined with Toronto being wayward leads to Ottawa finally equalizing. A terrible pass from the back from Cotillard into midfield helps Rapid get the ball. They make a quick transition to Melanie Forbes, who takes a shot. It cannons off the post, and then Minna Lee is there. Great work by her to get at the end of it and finishes the rebound. And Rapid equalize. And I think that kind of tells the story of the half, really, and maybe of the game as well, that Toronto were very rusty and indisciplined, not just in the back, but in general, and kept losing the ball. And they got ahead with a good momentary direct ball, good service, good header. But overall, I don't think they saw that coming. And partly they were wayward because of Rapid being very good in their pressing and their plays. And I have to give Rapid the credit for that. The half belonged to the Rapid. They had that wide top-heavy shape with high fullbacks, which really helped them press high and unsettle Toronto. Second half was more of the same. I would say very much the same. For the most part, Toronto were wayward. They kept losing 50-50s. They were late to the ball, very lackluster. Rapid, on the other hand, were pressing pretty well, though they did tire over time and kind of lost that energy that they had in the first half. But yeah, overall, it was more of the same. And what I would also say that the half kind of peters out with both teams making subs with an eye towards the game ahead the same week. So because of that, since both teams had another game the same week, the subs that came in really did not help the momentum. And this meant that there was not enough of a push for a win, and both teams kind of seemed happy to take a draw and just walk away. But overall, Rapid were the better team. They had better pressing, better formation, better strategy easily, and it had to be an amazing boost for the Rapid and something to build on for the next game, which they did against the Roses big time. So let's go and cover that. All right, 2 days later and 2 hours away, and Ottawa find themselves in Montreal trying to steal Montreal's second place in the table for themselves. That was a really good storyline to go into, and very intriguing. Meanwhile, Roses were coming in from a loss, and they lost at home against Toronto. They had already lost in the stadium last week to Toronto, and so they really needed to try to get back to winning ways. So it was very intriguing. In terms of form, I would say Roses had the better of Rapid recently, so that gave them some encouragement, so that would have made the game even more closer. Now, Ottawa made some changes. They benched Desi Scott, probably for wear and tear, and they also benched Adamek, which meant Olivia Scott took up that right back position, which is going to come in handy in a second here. But otherwise, I think most of the changes were more rotational. Now, the first half, Rapid starts exactly where they left off. They were high press, high intention, good combination play, and a back three. So now Olivia Scott and Chu were playing fullbacks, and so they pressed up and the back three just like they did last time. But the difference was Roses were actually able to somewhat beat the press, unlike Toronto. So they did create some good chances. So that was surprising. The first few minutes or so, Roses were actually pretty good. They had a 4-3-3 with Paquin joining Boychuk and Abdu, and they were able to press. They were able to break the press and create some chances and go up. But because they were going too far up, and that continued pressing and high physicality led Rapid to win the ball in midfield. And guess who was there? Florence Belzile. I keep saying it. She was the player of the week easily. She gets the ball, makes this amazing run through the midfield, and then puts an exquisite through ball to Pridham, who, as always, is super reliable. She nutmegs Karpenko and has a sweet finish, and Rapid are 1-0 up. So I wouldn't call it against the run of play, but it was kind of, because Roses were having the better of the ball, but then Rapid go the other way and score. So very early on, Rapid stamped themselves into the game, and this makes it really hard for Montreal. But to their credit, Montreal continues to beat the press. They are really good at this, and they're able to find Abdu and Boychuk. But what they're not able to do is be good in the final third. And this has been their story for the last 2 or 3 weeks now. They're terrible in their final third. Abdu has gone quiet. Boychuk has been, I don't think she has been utilized well. She's just all over the place. And so that really has made it hard for Montreal in the previous few weeks, and this game as well. Now, for all their good work that they were doing with beating the press, their back line has been terrible with some wayward passes, and that's what happens next. They undo all that good work with horrible work in the back. So they try to play out from the back, and Felicia Roy has this pass. It's not even a pass. It's just giving it directly to Belzile and saying, hey, try to see if you can make a through pass to Pridham, which she obliges. Belzile just calmly places it in the path of Pridham, who places it into the net off the crossbar, and Rapid are 2-0 up. So before we know it, Rapid are 2-0 up. Some of that Montreal's fault, some of that very, very good intent and pressing from Rapid, and just like that, the game is an uphill battle for Montreal from there, because they have to keep committing numbers forward, even in defense, and they have to push higher, and they have to try to break that press and put pressure. So they're almost playing like a 4-2-4, even out of possession. And this means one good pass from the Rapid, and they can unlock Montreal. Though, that said, Rapid does start sitting deeper a little bit, maybe for good reason. I mean, it's their second game of the week. They are 2-0 up. Maybe it's understandable. So they sit deeper. They do like a 4-5-1, which gives Montreal more of the ball and actually gives them more confidence. That said, key thing to note here, at one point, Montreal lose their starting goalkeeper Karpenko. She gets into a collision with Pridham, and Gabby Lambert has to sub in. Now, this is something we need to follow for the future weeks. This is a big, big change. Lambert was subbed out early on in the season for Karpenko, and since then Karpenko has been amazing, although she has made some recent errors, but overall amazing. So this is going to be a big blow for Montreal if she doesn't come back on time. But anyway, so that kind of is how the half finishes as well. Overall, Rapid very good with their pressing and also intent, but Roses are able to beat the press, able to pass around them and build up, but woeful in the final third, and also pretty woeful in their defense with some of the plays, but primarily woeful in the final third. Second half, there are some subs, but the only thing I want to just note is Kong Che-rim. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, Kong Che-rim. She makes her NSL debut from South Korea. Recent signing for the Roses. She comes in place of Whitaker, but though that kind of changes up the Roses formation. It's a first for them. I mean, Kong is actually a right winger, so she takes up that spot, which moves Boychuk to the other wing on the left, which also moves Sauvé to left back for the first time I've seen her there, and Laura Schenk moves to right back. So very interesting formation that. So that kind of makes them 4-4-2. But yeah, that's the main sub change that I would say. But otherwise, overall, the half kind of plays out in a way that Roses are very good with their continued pressing and pace. I would say Kong, for example, makes an immediate impact with her pace and intensity in pressing. And she actually creates two very good chances for Boychuk and Abdu, especially the chance for Boychuk. Kong plays this really good cross in from the right wing, and Boychuk is there to head it, but it's off the it's off the post. And that kind of sums up Montreal's evening and last couple of weeks. Very good play, very good build up, good combination, but terrible finishing. And so, and that kind of sums up the half for them as well. Roses had the better intensity, they had the better pressing, they had more shots, more chances, most of the half, but they kept struggling with finishing once again. And they really need to find that. I don't know how they're going to find it. They need to get Abdu back in form, do something different maybe. Meanwhile, Rapid, I have to say, were pretty good with their defensive shape. They to their credit, I mean, they could have afforded to do that, and they did. So they sat back. At some points, they were 6-3-1 even, and that's how much pressure they were willing to take. See the game out. Roses, in the meanwhile, I would say, though, they made some poor subs, which led to lose the shape and momentum in their bid to try to get a goal back. There was no plan to the subs. So even though I could see why they were going for some of the subs, there really was no plan or strategy behind it, and that kind of meant that the half petered away from Montreal, and for the most part, it was pretty easy goings and for the Rapid. But huge credit to the Rapid, I would say, for jumping up to second with a couple of really, really well-earned results, especially on a double-header week. Amazing. Just amazing. I mean, huge credit to Katrine Peterson as well with the rotation, strategic changes, especially kudos for the change with Florence Belzile instead of Stella Downing. I mean, I'm just wondering if Stella Downing was not injured in that warm-up, I don't know how these two games would have gone. Who knows? So, but still, huge credit to Katrine Peterson for making that change at the last minute, having to make it and making it well, and as well as Florence Belzile to step up and show what she can do. Can't wait to see where the Ottawa Rapid go from here. It does make the league table very intriguing going forward. But yeah, meanwhile, let's turn our focus to the other side of the table and let's see what Calgary Wild and Halifax Tides were up to. All right, so meanwhile, on the other end of the table, Calgary Wild was hosting Halifax Tides after a very good upset win they had last week against the Rapid of all teams. I know it's surprising now that Calgary Wild was able to come away with a win away from home at Ottawa. So it made that win even more special for Calgary, and I'm sure that would have buoyed them even more. Tides, meanwhile, were coming in with their own draw against the Rise at home. So both teams were coming in with some encouragement and momentum, and they were trying to do their best. Calgary definitely much ahead of the Tides at the bottom of the table, but still bottom of the table. So both teams needed something. Last three games, Wild and Tides have had some very high-scoring games, so it was everyone was hoping for something, more fun. Wild did make an interesting change that I want to point out. Maddie Wilson got her start after the last game, after the impact she had last game, including the role she had with the goal. So she started for Janaya Robertson, which I'll remark on again in a bit. Tides, meanwhile, made 6 changes. I really don't know why. The things to note there would be Clegg gets a start at the top in place of Amanda Allen, and Blouin gets a start for Sid Kennedy. I really don't know why they're moving so much. I mean, I guess I know because their forward line has been miserable. So I guess they're just trying their best to find the best combination they can. So I guess I can't blame them. So anyways, first half, Wild is happy to start with a high line with not a lot of press from the Tides. And so they just slowly start building up their way. They get a very early chance, maybe not because of their own thing, but because of a terrible pass from Julianne Walleran of the Tides. Very poor back pass, and it gives Doherty Howard a great chance. She hits it off the crossbar, I think of the first 5 minutes or so. Big let-off for the Tides. Calgary should have finished that, and that could have made the game a little different. But anyways, so Wild is able to get more time and space on the ball. They're able to play high, but both teams really struggle in the final third. They have terrible final passes, poor combination plays, so not a lot to take away from there. Though the high line does also give some chances for the Tides, but once again, their finishing is poor. I mean, Clegg has really been struggling, and she once again can't finish. I think the couple of chances she gets, she really should have done a lot better. So yeah, both teams. The problem is in the final third. Maddie Wilson, I want to make a very quick remark about her. She is actually one of the brighter sparks for Wild. She played the last game, played a big role in that. Even in this game, and every time Wild is going forward, she has a very big impact. She's creative, she has pace, she has very good ball control, though it does come at a cost for the team because her positioning skills I don't think are the best for a midfielder. I mean, if you play her in the front line, then yes, she is. She's perfect. But they played her in the midfield alongside Savitsky and Maggie Doherty-Howard in place of Janiyah Robertson, and there it becomes a bit of a liability if you're not positionally really good, which Robertson is a lot better at. Janiyah Robertson provides a lot better balance for that build-up play that Wild needs. And so that was sorely missing for Calgary in this game. They just couldn't play through the middle, create some chances through the middle, or even, distribute the ball to the wings if they wanted to. And that meant that Doherty-Howard couldn't also get on the ball as much as she would have liked. So I think that was a big miss this game. Maddie Wilson, they need to figure out a better spot for her. I would play her up top, maybe, considering how woeful their finishing has been recently or their forward line has been. But if anything, I wouldn't play her in the midfield. But she has a lot of potential, I would say. Tides, meanwhile, suffered from their usual issues. Poor build-up play, no pressing, no physicality, and no direct play. That was the biggest miss. I really thought they would learn their lesson from the last game, where the only times they were effective was when they went direct to Tiffany Cameron up top. But they didn't do that again. And I don't know why. I don't know if they just forgot. But that really made it even harder for them. That said, their defensive shape is still good. They've been doing pretty well in that. But if your attack is not going to hold up, there's only so much you can do. In the second half, Tides make their life harder for themselves. Like, they take out Lemire, who's their brightest spot, their rock in center midfield. They take her out. I'm not sure if it's because of an injury or not, but Lemire is taken out, and that just makes it even harder for them to keep that defensive shape. But more of the same from the first half. Valorant continues to struggle on the left flank. Julianne Valorant, I think, had a pretty rough day on the left flank for the Tides, and it opened up some very good combination plays for the Wild. And actually, that's how the goal comes too, because there's a throw-in, and Valorant finds herself out of position. That opens up space for Sarita Thurton behind the back line. She gets the ball with a lot of time and space to look up and find the ball into the box from the right wing, which she does. And she finds Catherine Harvey, who, by the way, Catherine Harvey has been absent for the most of the game for Calgary. But in this case, she is present, and she heads it home barely. It just crosses the line. And there was actually some confusion if it did or not, but it does cross the line. And that gives Wild the solitary goal of the game, and they go one up. So that's just bare minimum goal that comes for the game, which was just completely meandering without any direction. Both teams struggling. I would say both teams had their best chances from set pieces. They both struggled from open play. No cohesive midfield build up. No pressing, any sort of attacking effectiveness. I mean, these two teams have the worst attacking lines by a mile. I mean, Wild probably has the better of the two, but it's not a big difference. They really need to figure out how to sort that out. Calgary, I do expect better from them. Baucom has been good. Baucom is a bright spark, but Catherine Harvey and Sarita Thurton both have been very missing for big chunks of the game, so they need to figure out a better way. Maybe play Maddie Wilson up top. That might be a better strategy. But I'm expecting better from the Wild. They aren't that far back from the rest of the team, so I'm hoping they'll fix that. But overall, no wonder these two teams are at the bottom of the table. They both have a lot of things to fix, especially going forward. But anyways, let's move on and talk about the last game of the week, which was AFC Toronto hosting Vancouver Rise at BMO Field, and another very interesting result. All right, Sunday, bloody Sunday for Toronto, because it's their second game in 4 days, and they're hosting Vancouver Rise, who themselves are coming from a 1-1 draw previously against the Tides. So both teams had a lot to play for, but let me just start by saying amazing atmosphere at BMO Field. I hope to see more of this for the league, because such a good showcase for the league of what it can provide when it's given a good setting, the scale that something like BMO Field can provide. This is the second game that Toronto is playing at the stadium. The first one was the inaugural game of the NSL season. So I really hope to see more of this. But anyways, back to the game. These two teams have been split even in the last head-to-heads that they've had. And so great matchup for a great setting. So this was going to be an amazing game anyways. Toronto makes some changes to get back to full strength. Strategakis comes in for Burns, and Okoronkwo comes into the lineup as well, as expected. Rise also makes some changes. A key one is Nicky Stanton, who comes in for center defensive midfield to kind of strengthen their midfield. Now, Rise actually start with a really interesting shape of 3-4-3 by sending their left back Okamoto up. Now, I've been seeing this with Rise the last few games. Usually they send Jasmine Spencer on the right back up, but Spencer has not been doing that. I don't know why. She's very good at that, but she's not been doing that. But instead, on the left back position, Okamoto was up, but she wasn't good at that. Now, Toronto exploited the space behind her like anything. I mean, Okoronkwo and Small were absolutely feasting on her because Okamoto could not cover the space behind her. This led to some very good chances, really good chances for Toronto, where they would put the ball in from the right flank and try to find someone to score. Partly, McCaslin does a very good job and makes some good saves, but also partly Toronto lacks a good option on the left flank to meet those balls and who can finish those chances. I do think that Pickett, who usually plays with Hunter and Okoronkwo up top, was playing a lot deeper this time, maybe because of that, but either way, didn't really help. And I think Toronto missed a big phase of the play in that first 20 to 30 minutes where they should have been leading. Anyways, a big note to make. Match did start out with a very aggressive approach. There were a lot of fouls in the first 20 to 30 minutes. Some of them should have been called, actually. And the ref was really under pressure. And, it kind of showed. Jasmine Spencer finally gets a yellow card around the 30-minute mark. Definitely deserved, but it kind of highlighted how aggressive the game had been till that point. But that said, both teams were very sloppy in passing and build-up in that first 30, 40 minutes. And the best chance, I think, came to the Rise around the 30-minute mark from a set piece where they had like 2 or 3 shots on target, and Toronto somehow were able to keep it out. I think the best one was for Lisa Pachersky, who had a shot on target and just got deflected away. But that was the best from both teams, really. It was pretty sloppy in the first 30, 40 minutes. And then the game changed. At 37th minute mark, Okoronkwo gets the ball for Toronto in the midfield, tries to dribble past a few players, and Jasmine Spencer wait a minute. I know I'm on a yellow card, but you know what? You're not getting past me, so take this boot to the stomach. So she misses the ball by a mile and just kicks Okoronkwo in the stomach. And it was such an easy decision for the ref to even give a direct red. That would have been a direct red, but she gets a second yellow, sent off. Rise are down to 10 women. Now, this changes everything. Okamoto has to be moved to right back now. Pachersky drops to left back, and the Vancouver Rise moved to a 4-3-2. At least for the rest of the half, they were trying to figure it out. And both teams are trying to figure it out from there. And the half does peter away, but it kind of highlights how aggressive that first half was. And this changes the game completely. Because in the second half, the Rise start with a really interesting sub. You would have thought they would have made a defensive sub, but instead they bring on a forward, Mariah Lee, in place of a central defensive midfielder, Nikki Stanton. Really interesting move. An attacking sub, especially when you're down a player, and they start 4-2-3 with Chang and Quinn playing in the midfield. Now, what this means is because there's still three forwards, this pushes the Toronto backline, and then right away, the Toronto backline have a brain freeze. They probably weren't expecting that, I guess. But they have a brain freeze with first Emma Regan playing a terrible back pass, but then Croy Soto, who could have rectified it, fails to clear an easy ball and just gifts it to DiFilippo inside the box, who does the needful, who really does what she should have done, and she does it really well. She just bends it into the far corner nicely and rise her up 1-0 within 25 seconds of the second half. I mean, that's criminal from Toronto. Like, you're up a player, you have 45 minutes to play, and you just do that. You just completely give the ball to the team within your own box and let them score. That's criminal. But if I'm Vancouver, I'm happy because now I can switch to a 4-4-1, and it gives me a stable core to just keep defending for the rest of the half. You just sit back and take the pressure, and that's what they do. Now, that does give Toronto time on the ball, and there's not much pressure, and they're sometimes able to play through balls and stuff, but it's not. It's an uphill task when the team just is going to sit back. And also, Toronto is very wasteful with their balls in the final third overall. Now, Toronto does make some subs. Key one is Ayo Kizaki, who I do think has a very good impact on the game. She has this, at one point, she has this really good through ball to Okoronkwo, and Okoronkwo's shot is off the post. I think that's the best chance that Toronto has all half. Very good chance created by Kizaki off the post. But that was rough. But otherwise, I think Toronto was pretty bad with their chances in the final third. They were creating a lot, but they were very bad. Partly because Rise were also very disciplined in defense. Lisa Pechersky, I want to give her a big call out. She does an amazing job at filling in at left back, but she also does really well in terms of counters. She would take the ball and run the other way and counter, which gives her team a lot of more time and possession, which is invaluable when you're a player down, right? So great work by Pechersky. But overall, I think the crux of the rest of the half for Toronto was that Toronto's strength in defense that we saw in the previous games actually becomes their biggest weakness here. They keep falling back to a back five, like a defense with Nikki Small and Barnett. They're used to falling back and defending leads. They do that even in this stage. I mean, I'm like, why are you doing that? You're not leading. You're trailing, and this can be good when you're leading, but not right now. You have to be a lot higher up. But here, they just keep making it hard for themselves because they're too far back. Small and Barnett are like falling back every time they're out of possession. And then it becomes hard for them to catch Vancouver on transition. And what that means is Vancouver gets a lot of time and their defense gets enough time to get in shape and defend with a compact shape. So usually when you are a player up, you want to catch the other team in transition fast enough so that they can't really get back and just sit in that shape. But Nikki Small and Barnett being so far back and Toronto playing a 5 in defense when you're a player up, I just never understood that. And I mean, I kind of do because that's their usual go-to formation when they are trying to defend. And we've seen that many times this season. But their strength kind of becomes their weakness there. And as the game gets to a close, they kind of fade away because of that until, like, I would say the last 3 minutes of this game are so fun. They finally wake up and try to go for it. And there's two or three great chances within a minute. 2 off the crossbar, 1 Emma Regan shot from outside the box. Really good save by McCaslin. Wow, what a save. But that kind of, the game kind of becomes super fun to watch with that crowd at BMO Field. It's a it was a really good end to that game. But huge props for Vancouver for being aggressive with their subs. I have to say that sub that they made at the half was very inspiring. And also they were very disciplined with defense, especially big shout out to Lisa Paczerski, Shannon Buller, and Morgan McCaslin. Amazing game. TO on their end needs to work on that shape. They need to be wary of dropping too far back, especially with small. But yeah, they need to really fix that going forward. But overall, amazing game to watch as a neutral, great atmosphere, and a really good showcase for the league to the wider sporting world. And I hope to see more of that. All right, so let's look ahead to the next week. But it looks like, after all that action last week, I guess the league wants us to take a breather, because this week we only have 2 games. First one is on Saturday at 12:30 with Montreal hosting Calgary. The Roses need a win. They really need a win. They just need to figure out their final third. They don't need to change personnel, I would say. They're good, but they just need to really get better at finishing. Calgary, meanwhile, need to build on their momentum. They're finally getting some momentum, so they need to not lose it. Though that said, I do think the Roses are going to get their act together at home and get a 2-1 win, I think. And then on Sunday at 2 p.m., Ottawa hosts Vancouver. Both teams are going to try to build on their wins, of course. Both teams had a good week. But Ottawa especially are going to have an eye on the Montreal game, as they are level on points with the Roses. And so any slip up there, and Ottawa are going to try to pounce on that. My heart says I think Ottawa could win. I want to say 2-1, but just to be realistic, I do think Vancouver are going to give them a good fight. So it's going to be a 1-1 draw. All right, so with that, I think we covered a lot this week. It was a lot of action, really fun games. Huge credit to Ottawa once again for having a successful week. Huge credit to Vancouver and Toronto for putting on a show on Sunday. So I really hope we get more of those games going forward as well. So I hope you guys have a great week, have some amazing games on the weekend. And until I see you next, be good, be kind, and be you.